5 congressional seats. In the razor-thin margins of American politics, 5 seats are everything. They are the difference between a speaker's gavel and the minority bench. And as of Thursday night, the Supreme Court has cleared the way for a map that could hand those 5 seats directly to Republicans in Texas. But it's how this decision happened, bypassing oral arguments and overturning a lower court's finding of racial discrimination, that has legal experts and political strategists reeling. Welcome back. Today, we are breaking down a massive development out of the Supreme Court that dropped late Thursday, December 4th. Here's the situation. Texas Republicans redrew the state's congressional maps earlier this year in an aggressive mid-cycle redistricting push. A panel of 3 federal judges, including a Trump appointee, blocked those maps in November. That lower court found that Texas had likely engaged in racial gerrymandering, sorting voters based on their race to dilute the power of Black and Latino communities. But Texas appealed to the Supreme Court, asking for emergency relief. And on Thursday, in a 6-3 decision split along ideological lines, the conservative majority granted it. This creates a major victory for Donald Trump's efforts to secure a House majority for the second half of his term. Let's get into the specifics of why the Supreme Court stepped in. The clock was ticking. Texas has a candidate filing deadline of December 8th. That's practically tomorrow in legal time. The state argued that the lower court's order to redraw the maps came too close to the election, causing confusion and upsetting the federal-state balance. The Supreme Court majority agreed. In an unsigned order, they stated that the district court had improperly inserted itself into an active primary campaign. Essentially, they invoked a concept often called the Purcell principle, which suggests courts shouldn't change election rules at the 11th hour. But the dissent from the court's 3 liberals was scorching. Justice Elena Kagan, joined by Justices Sotomayor and Jackson, wrote a sharply worded objection. She pointed out something critical. The lower court didn't make this decision lightly. They produced a careful 160-page ruling based on evidence. Kagan wrote, and I want to quote this directly because it is powerful, "We are a higher court than the district court, but we are not a better one when it comes to making such a fact-based decision." She argued that the Supreme Court majority overturned this detailed work based on a perusal over a holiday weekend of a cold paper record. Her argument is that by issuing this stay, the court guarantees that a map with enhanced partisan advantage will govern the next election, forcing citizens into districts based on their race for no good reason. It's important to note the nuance here. The Supreme Court has previously ruled that partisan gerrymandering, drawing lines to help a political party, is permissible, but racial gerrymandering is unconstitutional. The lower court said this was racial. The Supreme Court majority said, essentially, we're pausing that ruling, use the maps anyway, because it's too late to change them. So what does this actually mean on the ground? Politically, this is a massive infusion of momentum for the Republican Party. Governor Greg Abbott was blunt about the victory, stating, "We won. Texas is officially and legally more red." Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton went further. In a statement, he claimed this order defended Texas's fundamental right to draw a map that ensures we are represented by Republicans, adding that Texas is paving the way as we take our country back, district by district.
For Democrats, this is a nightmare scenario. Hakeem Jeffries, the House Democratic leader, didn't mince words. He said the court has, once again, shredded its credibility by rubber stamping a racially gerrymandered map. The NAACP president, Derek Johnson, accused Donald Trump of working to rig the system to try and steal votes from Black and brown Americans. But this isn't happening in a vacuum. This is part of a broader national strategy. Republicans in North Carolina and Missouri have also passed new maps recently. Meanwhile, Democrats are countering with new maps in places like California, where Governor Gavin Newsom championed a measure to redraw lines there. It's an arms race of redistricting. But the Texas decision is unique because of the sheer volume of seats involved, potentially adding 5 Republican-friendly spots in a single stroke. I want to pause here and ask you a question, because this distinction is tricky. The Supreme Court says drawing lines for political gain is allowed, but drawing them based on race is illegal. But in a state like Texas, where voting patterns often correlate heavily with demographics, where do you draw that line? Is it possible to have a partisan map that isn't inherently impactful to minority voters? I'd love to read your perspective on this legal distinction in the comments below.
We also need to talk about the process. This ruling came via the shadow docket, emergency orders decided without full briefing or oral arguments. Critics argue these temporary decisions have permanent consequences. As Justice Kagan noted, this stay ensures the map will govern next year's elections. Even if the litigation continues, the 2026 midterms in Texas will be fought on these lines. And since incumbents rarely lose, these temporary maps often create permanent realities. Donald Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi celebrated this, arguing federal courts have no right to interfere with a state's decision to redraw legislative maps for partisan reasons. And that seems to be the winning argument right now in Washington. The bottom line is this. The rules of engagement for the 2026 midterms were just rewritten in the dark of night. With the candidate filing deadline just days away, the field is set. Republicans have secured a significant structural advantage in Texas, one that could very well determine control of the U.S. House. The legal battle may continue, but for the voters in those districts, the reality has already been decided. If you found this analysis valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing. We dig deep into these court documents so you don't have to. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.